All right, let's now move on to some other stories where the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has stood by his official who suggested that a faction within the Indian government was the one that was involved in sabotaging his visit to India last week. Now, Trudeau has indicated the allegations against India were made because the Canadian officials know it to be absolutely true. Now, Trudeau was grilled by the opposition lawmakers in the parliament about the invitations that had been given to Jaspal Atwal to attend two events with the Prime Minister in India. Now, Trudeau's office also maintained the invitation to Atwal was immediately cancelled after it was discovered that he had made it to the official guest list for a dinner event hosted by the Canadian High Commissioner in New Delhi. Now, Jaspal Atwal was in fact convicted of attempting to assassinate an Indian cabinet minister, Malkiat Singh Sidhu, in British Columbia in the year 1986. Now, the Canadian official who suggested the conspiracy theory is reportedly identified as Justin Trudeau's national security advisor, Daniel Jean. Now, Jean had suggested some so-called rogue elements within the Indian establishment who had conspired to embarrass the Canadian Prime Minister to derail the rapprochement between Ottawa and New Delhi.
Will the Prime Minister tell the House whether or not anyone in his office arranged, organized, or participated in the media briefing provided to reporters that included the allegation that the government of India was somehow involved in his embarrassing blunder in India?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can understand where the opposition finds this difficult because for 10 years they used the professional public service for partisan ends. They torqued the public service every possible way they could, and they do not understand that our professional non-partisan public service does high-quality work, and when one of our top diplomats and security officials says something to Canadians, it's because they know it to be true.
Order.
All right, now this is of course a case that is going to have serious implications in the India-Canada relationship, and to discuss more on this we are joined in by Candace Malkin, who is a journalist from Toronto. Well, Candace Malkin, this is, of course, a big case, and also it is something that's being discussed in the Canadian Parliament. Now, talk to us a bit about why this entire controversy and why does the Canadian establishment feel that there were some insiders within the Indian establishment who perhaps were trying to sabotage the visit of Justin Trudeau to India?
Well, it's an interesting question. You know, this was really a remarkable exchange in the House of Commons today between Justin Trudeau and the opposition leader, because Justin Trudeau has repeated a claim that never had any substantiation. There was never any evidence.
Right.
There was a senior official in the Canadian government who had done an off-the-record briefing. He had done a briefing with media in Canada on the condition that he remain anonymous. And then that was where he put forth this basically conspiracy theory, stating that there was a rogue element in the Indian government responsible. So it's a big development today that Justin Trudeau has repeated that claim, that he's put his own name behind it and doubled down on it, which is quite remarkable because there really isn't any proof or evidence to back up this theory that somehow the Indian government was involved or somehow orchestrated this event with Jaspal Atwal in order to embarrass the Prime Minister. I think that we need to have a lot more of an explanation from the Canadian Prime Minister as to why this claim is the case, why he said in the House of Commons today that he knows that it is true.
Right, Jaspal Atwal was someone whose name was on the invite list for a dinner, an official dinner that was to be hosted by the Canadian High Commissioner in New Delhi. So how could an Indian rogue element official, as the conspiracy theory suggests, could be involved as to who is in fact invited for dinner by the Canadian High Commissioner in India?
Well, that's a question that the Prime Minister of Canada has not answered. And there's so many things that don't really add up when it comes to Justin Trudeau's version of the events, because we know that this individual, he's been a longtime supporter of the Liberal Party of Canada. He donated to the campaign in 2011. And there's been photographs that have been circling around online of Jaspal Atwal with Justin Trudeau dating back 5-10 years ago. There was one taken in 2015 and then an earlier one where Justin Trudeau looks quite a bit younger. So we know that these two have had a relationship. Jaspal Atwal has told the Canadian media that the two are friends and that they're on a first-name basis. So, Justin Trudeau's claims today in the House of Commons haven't been backed up. In fact, they've been contradicted by the evidence that's available to us. So his explanation today really was just doubling down on a conspiracy that not only hurts his own credibility, but it really hurts Canada's relationship with India. It's a very serious accusation to level against an ally that they somehow orchestrated this event.
Right, absolutely. And also considering the fact is, you touched upon the fact that there have been photos of Jaspal Atwal and Justin Trudeau which have been taken in the past. Now, Jaspal Atwal has in fact come out and made a statement to the media where he has said that, look, me and Justin are fairly good friends. He comes, talks to me as, hey, Jess, how are you doing? This is the sort of rapport and relationship that we share, which was later denied in a statement by the Prime Minister's office in Canada. Now, the fact is, Justin Trudeau has got friends, and there are members within his own cabinet who are said to be sympathizers of the Khalistani movement. Why is Justin Trudeau now shying away from owning up to these relationships that he has had in Canada?
Well, it's a good question, and I think it's a question that a lot of Canadians are also wondering, because we really haven't had a lot of accountability as to why this individual was invited in the first place and why the Prime Minister of Canada is associating with and even pandering to this very extreme, very radical group of people in Canada who are trying to create harm internationally and try to create a separatist movement in India. So we haven't really had a lot of explanation. I think that Trudeau needs to do better. It was very surprising, frankly, to hear him doubling down on this claim of this conspiracy theory, again, without providing the proof or the evidence. So I think that there's still a lot more unraveling that needs to be done. There's a lot more questions that need to be answered, and the Trudeau government in Canada needs to take more responsibility and explain how this all happened.
Right, and also, Candace, just before I let you go, how do you think this entire episode is likely to affect the India-Canada relationship, which until just about this visit had always been on the upswing?
Right. I mean, Canada considers India to be a good ally, one of our strongest, if not our strongest allies in Asia. It's an incredibly important relationship. It's such a shame that Trudeau has taken it for granted that he spent 8 days in India, not trying to cultivate the relationship and to grow new ties and to promote India-Canada trade or natural resource trade, but instead to really promote his own brand and at the same time wink and nod and pander to these extremist elements in the Sikh community in Canada. It's very unfortunate, and I think that Canadians, Trudeau deserves. Canadians deserve better than what Trudeau is doing, and Indians do as well. I hope our two countries can have a better relationship going forward.
Right, Candace, thank you very much indeed for having joined us from Toronto and got us all those latest updates. Now, this is almost a sort of a bizarre incident that the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has come forth on the House of the Parliament in Canada and has backed what essentially till about yesterday had been a conspiracy theory where one of the officials in an off-the-record briefing had said that, look, perhaps there were rogue elements within the Indian establishment who had got the name of Jaspal Atwal included in the dinner invite list. A dinner that was to be hosted by the Canadian High Commissioner in New Delhi. It's almost bizarre as to have any Indian official would have had a say in terms of who is going to be invited and who is going to be left out in a dinner invite list in the case of the Canadian High Commissioner making that invite list. And also Tory party MP Candace Malkin questioned Trudeau in the Assembly Hall on this issue. Listen in to this interesting exchange in the Canadian Parliament.
Is it the Prime Minister's belief that the government of India conspired and manipulated events in order to ensure the attendance of Jaspal Atwal, a convicted terrorist, at a reception in India last week with the Prime Minister?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member knows, I cannot discuss security details on the floor of the House, but I can tell her with absolute assurance that all Canadians can be assured that our police and our security agencies have done their job in relation to this visit, and they have done it very well.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader. Order.
According to multiple media outlets, a briefing was organized by the Prime Minister's office with a high-level national security advisor who suggested that the government of India's own intelligence service orchestrated the ability for Mr. Atwell to be in India at the same time as the Prime Minister's visit. This is a very serious allegation, Mr. Speaker. What proof does the Prime Minister have that the government of India did this?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I can say that the invitation that was issued to this particular individual, Mr. Atwell, should never have been issued. And indeed, as soon as it was discovered, it was rescinded by the Government of Canada.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
According to a Global News report, the PMO organized a briefing where one of the most senior members of the civil service advanced the following theory, and I quote, "The Jasbel Atwell, the terrorist invited by the Liberals to Mumbai, may have been planted there by the Indian government or maybe the Indian security agencies or perhaps by factions in the Indian government," unquote. The media did not make this up, Mr. Speaker. This briefing happened. The Prime Minister needs to tell Canadians if this allegations against the Indian government is believed to be true, and if so, where is the proof?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, again, I make the very strong point that all of the police and security officers and agencies of the Government of Canada in dealing with this issue have done their job in the national interest, and they have done it extraordinarily well.